my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Basson, and I am a relationship and dating expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of the book You Have a Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are not currently portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news, TV, social media, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think, do, or go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't actually exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but this is their chance to express their opinion and their story. So here today we have Roy Biancalana, and we're going to talk about self-sabotage. Hi, Roy. Tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, well, I am a relationship coach. And that might be the first thing to say is that means something technical to me. It's not, I'm not a dating coach,
Okay.
right? In my mind, a dating coach, which is fine, it's just not what I do. It's someone who helps people with how to date, like where to go, how to meet people, maybe how to write a profile, you know, how to get someone to approach you, how to flirt, that kind of stuff. I don't do that.
Yeah.
I really coach people um, on
How
how
to have a
to,
relationship.
yeah, how to function mindfully and consciously, or how to function in healthy ways so that the relationships you have, specifically intimate relationships, but frankly, all relationships,
Yeah.
function in meaningful, sustainable ways.
Yeah.
And Sophie, one of the reasons I got into this, sometimes I joke that when I was a little boy, 6, 7 years old, I was not hoping one day to grow up and be a relationship coach.
No, I
Right.
didn't wake up one day when I
Yeah.
was 8, 5 and think, that's what I'd be
Right.
doing, sort of thing.
Right. No, no, I wanted to play baseball and all that, be a fireman, all that other kind of stuff when I was a little kid. So this was never a dream of mine. I sort of got forced into this job, and basically because of my own relationship history.
Hmm.
And so this is something I think people should know about me is this is not a topic that I come to, because, I have some sort of intellectual interest in it, or, I've always been fascinated by relationships. I'm in this for very personal reasons. And that is
Hmm.
basically because up until my current relationship, which now is 17 years long, but I've just had horrible relationships with women. I have just not been able to figure out how to relate with a woman in a decent way. And
Yeah.
so I was married for 19 years and that became very platonic. We didn't fight much. We didn't F much. We didn't, we were friendly and we co-parented, but we lost our man-woman thing. So went through a divorce. I initiated that, although I don't think my ex-wife was that much against it because I don't think she was that happy with it either. And
Can I
I,
just stop you for a second? I
yeah,
just feel like what you just said is actually probably, well, I'm not going to put a percentage on it, but a very large percentage of the population.
yeah, yeah. You mean in terms of people that are together but very platonic and so
Yes.
forth? Yeah,
I just think that it's a subject that, in essence, should kind of be taught at school, like proper communication should be taught at
right,
school, because
right.
people don't know how to interact with each other.
No, no, no. We could talk about that for days too. That's
Yeah, 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 quite.
one of my pet peeves. I mean, the two most important things that go on in our lives that really affect our happiness and well-being are our intimate relationship and our parenting. And
Hmm.
we get training for neither.
Yeah,
It's like
quite.
we learn all about, math and science and okay, that's well and good. But you want to talk about having a quality life, and no one teaches you how to relate with another human being or how to raise a child. And yet, that's a huge part of most people's lives. So that's
So,
just a
so
whole,
obviously there's that side of it, and
yeah,
then there's the self-sabotage side of it.
right, right. And that's why I sometimes joke that I'm not really a relationship coach as much as I'm a relationship trainer, right?
Hmm.
I sort of train people on what does it mean to live and love consciously, mindfully? What does it mean to live and love, and I should say it this way, in ways that have proven to work
Yeah.
time and again, right?
Yeah.
There's conventional wisdom in the world and it's fine. And then there's the conscious wisdom. And it's very, very different. And it's not like one is evil and one is good. It's just I have found that one works and one doesn't,
Yeah.
right? So I that's what I do is because of all my drama in my relationships because after I got divorced I rebounded into another relationship and we got engaged
Which
and
again
then
is common.
she dumped me 6 months before the wedding and so that broke my heart and then I did a bunch of online dating trying to forget her which just led to more drama and I finally hired a coach.
Yeah.
I finally decided that maybe it wasn't because I just haven't met the right person yet, that maybe I was blind to something that I was doing or feeling or right. So I hired a coach and that was so transformative for me. And it changed my life to the point where now I've been married now for 17 years. And the reason I
Question
became
for
a
you.
coach, I became a coach simply, I almost like I was forced to.
Yeah.
Like there's an old movie, based on a book, The Chronicles of Narnia,
Yeah.
right, where Lucy wanders into the wardrobe closet and finds Narnia, and it's like, oh, it's unbelievable. And she has to go back and tell her friends what she found, right? That's kind of how I feel. I worked with
Hmm.
a coach, and I found Narnia. It's like I found some amazing insights into what I was doing and why my love life was so bad. I'm like, I got to go tell some people about this. So I became a coach to do for other people what my coach did for me.
Question for you, because I've often wondered this, because obviously you're in the States and I'm not.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering whether there's a similar thing there, or whether sometimes Europe is a little bit behind the States for certain things. I find in this country, or Europe in general, that people find it difficult to admit it's their fault and to take responsibility. Therefore, they struggle with the idea of getting help because then that's admitting to themselves that the problem lies with them rather than blaming the world, blaming
Right.
whoever.
Right.
Do
Right.
you find the same thing?
Yeah. That's universal right there.
Okay.
Because that just comes purely from ego. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you got one of those. But speaking of self sabotage, I think this is the root, the real root of self sabotage is when you think that what you're experiencing in your love life, the
Someone
difficulties,
else's fault.
it's somebody else's fault. And the reason that's self sabotaging is because every single time a person decides to look for what their part is, and I don't mean this to say it's about self blame and self loathing
No.
and self shaming. It's just about being
You're the
curious.
common denominator here.
Right, right. It's just being curious about what's my part in how my love life is going. So when a person isn't willing to look in the mirror, it's self-sabotaging because then they never discover what's going on in them that led them to be attracted to that person in the first place, or they never learn the lessons about things they ignored or didn't speak up about or different patterns that they never learn that stuff. And if you don't learn it, it just repeats itself.
Mm.
And so you could switch partners. And this is why I just listened to somebody's podcast the other day and they were talking about the tendency to keep attracting the same kinds of people over and over again. Well, I laughed at that because I called that the relationship Groundhog Day syndrome, you
Mhm.
know, 20 years ago. And they're just, okay, great. I'm glad we're all getting on the same page here. But there is a tendency for people to say, okay, it's a different person, different face, different background, but they're the same person. Like they're both narcissists or they're both emotionally unavailable. So why do I keep attracting and getting in the same patterns? Well, that's because you're not learning the lessons.
I did a bit of research on that recently, and basically what I found was, I mean, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it actually makes total sense, is how the brain can mistake chemistry for unresolved drama, for want of
Mhm.
better terms. And because the physiological aspects are similar, it
Right.
confuses both. And yes, as you say, you consciously step in and realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. And my own podcast that just came out 10 days ago, I did a whole podcast on chemistry, and that was the
Mhm.
message that there chemistry is a very untrustworthy type of experience because it can be a healthy kind or an unhealthy kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have a tendency to get attracted to the negative qualities of our parents that are in that other person. So chemistry is a wonderful experience, but you got to make sure that it's kind of the healthy
Right one.
kind and not the unhealthy kind,
Yeah.
right? So back to the self-sabotaging thing. This is what I did to myself. This is why my marriage didn't work out, and then my rebound engagement didn't work out, and then a bunch of other relationships didn't work out, is I never looked in the mirror. So I kept attracting the same kinds of women and the same kinds of dynamics because I was still the same kind of guy,
Yeah.
right? So taking responsibility and, recognizing that without me, it would never turn out the way it is. And what can I learn about myself? Why do I keep attracting emotionally unavailable people? Why do I keep attracting people who are in addiction or people who are abusive or people who are afraid of commitment? Once you start to have your own aha moments, well,
Yeah.
then your energy changes, your way of being in the world shifts, and then you no longer are attracted to those kind of people. So that's why I say it's people, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they put all their emphasis on is where do I find the right kind of person? Where do I meet the right person? And it's the wrong way to
Question.
go about it.
Yeah. Do you think society has a part to play in the fact that it seems, especially at the moment, we're in a blame society?
Mhm.
And when people split up from somebody, they never ever look at what unconscious part they may have played.
Right,
It's always the other person's fault. If it's a woman, they go bitching with her friends. If it's a bloke, I'm pretty sure they do exactly the same thing.
right.
And it's never about what could I have done differently.
Correct. Beautiful. I couldn't say it better. That's the major shift from what they did to me, the blame and all that, to what's my part. And it took me a long time to open up to that possibility. I just thought my ex-wife was blah blah, my ex-fiance was blah blah, and then all you women I met online, blah
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 blah.
blah. And I think it just took enough pain in my life for me to open up to the possibility that maybe there was something about me going on that I was unconscious of, some
Yeah.
belief I had, some issue. And when I work with a coach, and this is what I do with my clients, I just pass it along. My coach, and I think our first session, she said, listen, I don't want to talk about your ex-wife or your ex-fiance because she knew my story or any of the other women you met. I don't want to hear about. If you just want to blame them and bitch about them, then I'm out. But if you want to look in the mirror, right, then I'm all ears. Because if you want to change the course and the trajectory of your love life, it's about discovering why you required these women to be exactly as they are. What were
Yeah.
you doing? What were you missing? And I opened up to that possibility. I really said, okay, I'll look in the mirror only because by that point I had tried everything else. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I really bought into it at the time, but I said, okay.
Just a
And so
different
we
angle.
started to look, and lo and behold, it really was me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I discovered, we talk about this sometime. I had severe mommy issues. I
Yeah.
was playing out my relationship with my mother in my adult female relationships, and I didn't know it. I didn't know that I learned patterns between me and my mother that were carrying themselves out unconsciously in me.
Yeah.
And so my love life, if I had never made those discoveries and never looked in the mirror,
But I've carried on.
I guarantee you I'd be in just one drama filled short term relationship after another. So that's my encouragement to people, as hard as it is on the ego. And I should say, Sophie, this doesn't mean that your ex or my ex didn't have some serious issues. Of course they
Oh,
did,
right.
right? So no one's saying that it's all like your fault and everybody else is perfect. No, 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 no. That's not it. My ex-wife had her issues and my ex-fiance did, and of course, right? It's just that without mine, we would never have gotten into a relationship in the first place. Right?
Hmm.
So when I take responsibility and look in the mirror and swallow my own ego, then I have these aha moments that change everything, but it's pretty hard to do.
I think one of the things I see with people a lot is the fear that it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt to reopen old emotional wounds. But the way I look at it, I don't call myself a coach for the reasons you just described, sort of thing, because I don't teach people how to flip their hair to attract somebody. I don't tell them checklist. I believe that you have to heal the past if you want to move forward. End off.
Mhm.
It won't
Yeah.
work any other way.
Yeah.
But people are scared.
Yeah. What I would say that makes sense that a person says, well, I don't want to go back and open up that wound. I don't want to feel that pain again. But here's the thing, Sophie, and you know this, and perhaps the listeners even do too. It if you haven't worked through your past, it is already sabotaging you. It's already hurting you. It might not be hurting you as acutely as you might think it could, but it's not like it's not there. It like your past is controlling your life right now. So if you don't go back and deal with it, it's not like, oh, if I go back and deal with it, it's going to be painful. No, it's already painful. You're just not seeing the effects of it, right? So, and I think if you look at your past properly, it really isn't painful in the way I think people think because
No,
all you're
it's like ripping the band-aid. You think it's going to hurt. It doesn't mean it's going to hurt. It's the threat of the pain.
right, right. Because from my perspective, when I work with people on letting go of baggage and past pain and hurts and betrayal or being cheated on, ghosted, gaslighted, all that kind of stuff, it's more of what are the lessons that
Mm.
that experience came into your life to teach you? Like what did you learn from that? How did that maybe make you wiser of a person? How did it help you grow? So we're not trying to go back and feel the pain of being cheated on. I mean, you know what that's like. We all know what that's like. But it's like, what can I learn from that? What are the lessons? Because if you don't get the lessons, then you're just going to repeat it. Yeah.
I think
So,
the other thing I see a lot of in terms of self-sabotage is self-talk and how the limiting beliefs and the self-fulfilling prophecies, all of that plays out. And people don't even realize they're being negative, but
yeah.
they kind of like fuck themselves over in advance, as it were.
Oh, yeah. This is a huge topic. It's almost like if you ask a fish, what's the water like? It won't even know how to answer you because
Yeah.
it just lives in the water, right? Most of us don't recognize how negative we are because it's always that way. It's like we're so used to the negativity and all of that is we don't really notice it. That's why I think committing to a practice like meditation can be so valuable because meditation really teaches you to observe your mind, like to notice thoughts come and go, be able to notice a thought rather than get caught up in it, right?
Mhm.
So the minute you can notice thoughts, you have the ability to say, wow, that was awfully negative of me. That was awfully pessimistic, or that was awfully judgmental. You begin to see what the mind is doing because you are not your mind. I mean, you're the one
Mm.
that notices the mind. But the mind is huge because we have all these beliefs. In one of my books, I write about that one of the essential things you need to do if you want to find a great relationship is fire your inner relationship coach, right?
Mm.
Like we all have a coach that lives in our head that is got all of its theories and it explains, well, this is why this person's doing that. And this is why, and this is what that means. Oh, when a person does that, when a man does that, when a woman's like that, if somebody's been divorced, if someone's never been married, you have all these theories in your head. It's like you have a coach in your head telling you um, and having all of its ideas, which 99% of them, if you pay attention, they're
Oh, well.
bullshit. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
wrong. They're assumptions, they're generalizations, and they're only based on your own experience.
Yeah.
Like, like, what if a person had only three serious relationships in their whole life? They only had three, and all three of them cheated. Let's say it's a
Yeah.
her. All three times the man cheated on her. Well, if you ask that person's mind, are men trustworthy? She's going to say no, of course not. And she'd be right. Men are not trustworthy from her perspective. But
Yeah.
she's only known three of them, not There's 4 billion men on the planet. And now you're projecting your limited experience on everybody. So if you don't notice, that's what the mind does. Because the mind, guy named, I think it's
We're wired for
Robert.
survival. So we look
Yeah,
for the one.
right. I think
To
it's a
protect ourselves.
guy named Brad Blanton who wrote a book called Radical Honesty. He said that the purpose of the mind is the survival of the being.
Yeah.
Okay. So your mind's just trying to keep you safe, which means if it doesn't know something,
God's
it's going
going
to
to
come up with an
relationship.
answer, right? Well, why did he say that? Well, I'm going to, like, the mind doesn't like the unknown, hates it, and it's going to fill it with whatever. It doesn't mean it's true. It's just some story to make you feel better.
Yeah.
So a key component of living consciously is questioning that voice in your head. It's not that it's always wrong, but it's being suspicious of its
Mhm.
theories, of its interpretations, of its beliefs, and questioning. This is one of the great things about a spiritual teacher's work by the name of Byron Katie.
Yeah.
She has a process about the whole mind. And one of her questions is it true? So we have these, you know, if
Is
you
it
meet
really
someone,
true?
if you meet a man, if he's cheated, once a cheater, always a cheater. Okay. And you can believe that. But is it true? Is it true that every single man who's cheated is going to do it again? Wait a minute. If you believe that, you might be on a date and somebody might say, yeah, a couple of years back, I was lost and I cheated on my wife and it came out and it was a disaster. And, oh, well, if you think once a cheater, always a cheater, you're
You're
out.
not going to entertain the guy.
Right. But what if the guy really learned some amazing things from that and it changed him to where he's going to handle the pressures of a relationship differently, unmet needs differently? Maybe if he's really grown from that choice, he may be more trustworthy now than ever.
Yeah.
Right. But if you have this belief, then
That's
you,
happened.
right? Because beliefs are very, very powerful. So, yeah, we self sabotage by listening to that voice in our head, thinking, it always knows what. I often say it's like we have our own Secret Service detail, right? They protect the president or the prime minister, and they're always watching for something wrong. Who looks weird, what's going on. And the minute they see any trouble, they whisk away the person to safety. So it's like we have that in our own head, especially if we've been hurt. We're looking for, what does that mean? What does that mean? What's that person doing? What's their motive? You're looking for trouble. At the first sign of what you believe is a danger sign, you're out of there. But you might be misinterpreting what they're saying or what they're doing, right? So you got to question your Secret Service detail.
But I think this is the thing. A lot of people, you've only got to watch any of the dating shows. The term that I can't stand at the moment is gives me the ick. What does
Yeah.
that even mean? And
Yeah.
it's just like basically you just don't like that. So it's a good enough excuse to just say no, off you trot, as opposed to trying to dig a bit deeper.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I've heard that phrase. It can be funny sometimes,
I just
but,
don't like it. It
right.
just
But,
stalks me.
well, I guess that's another huge topic. There are things that are real turnoffs to us that we should pay attention to, but there are other things that may be just the way you're interpreting it.
But I think the
Like,
other issue, people are so busy looking for red flags, they're not even seeing the green ones. There's
right,
never a green one. They're always looking for red, nothing
right,
else.
right. So they're dating from fear, right? I'm afraid.
Self-sabotage from the start.
Exactly. Right. And that brings up the whole issue of trust, right? I mean, our do we start our dating? Do we live our lives from an open, available heart, right? Like arms wide open, available to the present moment, willing to dance, willing to play, just I'm open. Here I am.
Mm.
Right? Do we start there? Or do we start with our arms crossed across our chest, saying, I'm not going to trust you until you prove it to me. You got to prove yourself to me, right? Now, when a person is in that place of, I don't trust until you prove it to me, I understand it because they've probably been hurt, right?
Mhm.
But it's a self sabotaging thing because if I'm a quality person and I meet a woman who's got her arms crossed and I can tell that I'm sort of being held at arm's distance, not from something I've done,
It's not attractive, is it?
but maybe from something that's happened to her. Okay, I understand that, but
But it's not attractive.
right, I don't want to bring a sledgehammer to this date and try to knock down your wall. Right?
Yeah,
That girl over there, she's got her arms wide open. I'm going to go play with her rather
yeah,
than try to make you trust me. Okay. So that's more incentive of how important it is to work through our past so that
totally.
we're not guarded, we're not suspicious. It doesn't mean you don't have boundaries, of course. It doesn't mean that the minute a man or a woman shows you something that is, a true red flag, that you shouldn't get out of there. But there's a difference from starting, come get me, and you got to prove yourself to me. There's a different energy
Totally.
there. It's not attractive. So we have to work on, what do we need to do so that I can move through life with an open, playful, vulnerable heart, right?
So that's how you break the cycle, in essence, isn't it?
Right. And it takes a certain, that's what I do as a coach, is help people get there.
Yeah.
And that's why we can circle back why I think it's useless to talk about where to go to meet someone. Because if you have some of those trust issues and that pain and that baggage, and so you're not really at that open, vulnerable place, it doesn't matter where you go to meet someone. You're going with that energy. So it's more about like getting prepared. And so I use an illustration. If a person wants to, like, let's just call it like a marathon. A person wants to run a marathon. They could hire a coach, and there are marathon coaches, and one of my buddies actually does that. And you could talk about strategy on the day of the race, how fast to go early and when to eat or drink, and race day strategy. But if you really want to be successful in a marathon, you should talk about getting prepared for it. Like, how do
Right.
I train? Okay. Because if I'm out of shape, I can have the best strategy on the race day, but I'm never going to make it because I'm just
Yeah.
not ready to go the distance. So a lot of people talk, where do I go to meet someone? It's like race day strategy. What do I say? Are you ready for something real? Are you ready to go the distance?
Yeah.
And so if you've got some of these beliefs, if you've got this baggage, I call them the killer bees in my new book coming out in a couple of weeks. Like baggage, beliefs, barriers, and the other one slipping my mind right now. But there's these things that keep us from connecting in healthy ways. And so we need to clear that stuff out of the way,
Yeah.
and do that kind of work. And, that's what you and I, that's what good coaches do, is help get people ready for something real. And then the universe just does what it does,
Yeah.
whether you want to use online dating or not. I mean, a lot of people have met that way. My son is 30 years old. He's dating a woman now. I think they're going to get married. They met online. So it works. I met my wife. I just sat down next to her at a conference and started flirting with her. She was the prettiest girl
Yeah.
in the room. So who knows how we meet people? It's just your job is, am I ready for something real so that when the universe does its tricks, okay, I'm on the starting line. I'm actually in shape. Whenever it happens,
Ready
I'm
for a
ready to
race.
run. Yeah.
Well, Roy, we're getting towards the end of our time. What do you think you could leave us with? What would you say now to your whatever age you were at the time when you were in bad relationships? Self, what would you say to yourself back then, knowing what you know today?
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about self-sabotage, I'll put it in terms of a question. And it's a
Hmm.
question that's come out of my new book. The question is, what is standing in the way of my ability to be close?
Yeah.
Like, that's a meditative type of question. You don't even answer it. The answer comes to you. Like, what is standing in the way of my ability to be close? Now, in that question is responsibilities all wrapped up in it. Because the question is, what is standing in the way of their ability to be close to me? That ain't it. What's standing in the way of my ability to be close?
And it'd be different for anybody.
Of course, right? But there's an answer to that. All of us, even
Yeah.
those of us who are in good relationships, we know what our issues are, or hopefully we know what they are. Ways in which we sabotage, or ways in which, I don't handle anger very well, or if I get triggered and feel insulted, then I go off this or that, or so what's standing in the way of your ability to be close?
Yeah.
And then you've got to get after that. You've got to work at that. And I have found that you can't do this type of work yourself, because if you could, you would have fixed it a long time ago. It's like trying to fix your own golf swing. You can't really see yourself. I mean, even if you videotape it, you need to find an expert who's probably dealt with this issue many times before,
Yeah.
that either can help you discover what is standing in the way, or once you identify that, well, here's how you work through that, right? So that's my advice, is that kind of question can lead to a whole quantum shift in your life.
Well, Roy, thank you so much for sharing all of this. For everybody else, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe, leave us a review, but more importantly, come back for the next episode. Thank you.